Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the J.Gray podcast. I am joined by not only a very good friend, but one of the most impressive technical producers, creative minds, and influential powerhouses when it comes to the FGC. His name is Mr. Brett Bielling. I call him the professor. Great to have you here, Brett.
Hey man, that's quite the intro. Thanks, I appreciate that. Definitely wasn't expecting that, man. Man,
Hey,
it's good to see your face, dude.
it's good to talk to you. I'm very
Yeah,
happy that we've stayed in touch during the pandemic and being able to share what we've been going through on a personal level, but also looking back at my personal improvement with Mortal Kombat and how I reached the rank of God last season with Sindel, and now I'm rocking Jackie Briggs this season, and how far I've come thanks to your patience and diligence and expertise and wisdom and teaching me about fighting games and really teaching me, not just about, oh, here's where to put the graphics for, for the game. But I had such a fascination and love for fighting growing up and being a trained fighter, but fighting games was always intimidating, and you helped bridge that gap. And so thank you for that. And that's where I really want to start is your passion and love for the FGC. Where did that come from?
man. Thanks for the compliment, dude. Like honestly, like it was two passionate people kind of just like sharing their love and excitement for it, right? And so like I'm a very introverted personality, but I mean, we start talking about things that I'm interested in, right? And the kind of the floodgates open. Fighting games has happened to be one of those things. That and the passion for like education, right? And just like really trying to bring people into that circle and really illustrate why things were cool. My passion for the fighting game community, it's I guess my first it had to have started with Smash. I started playing competitive Smash when I was in high school, and I went to my first tournament, which was MLG Anaheim 2006.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and that's where I like got my first taste, right? Like I was in high school at the time, and a lot of my friends had started competing in Smash ahead of time, like a year prior, but they had been playing and playing and playing. And I grew up in an area that was we were so lucky, right? Because Melee has never had online up until recently. And we had maybe like, I'm not exaggerating, I had probably like 20 different players that all played different characters and varying styles and levels of experience, right? And so you talk about like one of the best areas for a training ground, and that was it, like Palmdale Smash. And we became pretty infamous for that. Like a lot of people around Southern California eventually kind of gravitated towards us, and then we would pack up 3 cars and drive to San Diego or UCLA or wherever just to go play, right? So I think that's where it all started, right? And then growing up, like I was an athlete and I was a skateboarder and stuff, and so like team sports and competition was like in me since I was 7 years old, playing hockey. And then as I got older, like 18, 19, I was playing a lot of Smash. I was skating and I was getting ready to go to college and whatnot. And as you get older, you kind of age out of youth sports, right? And so all that competitive drive and energy went into gaming, and then it just kind of accelerated from there. Um, and then fast forward, jumping into other games that I absolutely loved. I remember moving into my apartment for the very first time when I was switching schools. So I went from studying kinesiology and physical therapy to art school, which is how I got my start in my career. But I ended up moving from one part of Southern California to another, and I moved in with my roommate. In the first month of moving into a new place, didn't have internet, right? And so what did I do? I actually played Mortal Kombat 9 for an entire month without actually like having online features or anything like that, and just played training mode for a month straight. And then that's how like my competitive drive actually got started in MK9, which then led into MKX, MK11, introduced me to Marvel versus Capcom for the first time, introduced me to Brian Compton, right? And so just like so many threads
Yeah, man.
of my life have stemmed out of this need or this want for this competitive environment, and yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
Within that landscape, I remember that you were at least top 30 of Smash, correct, in Southern
Hmm.
California. I mean, you were up there when it came to the competition. And
Yeah.
for a lot of people like myself who played Smash casually with my siblings, I knew of video game competition because of Brood War, because of StarCraft Brood War in Korea and how that was starting to transit over here on the West. And we knew of Quake, and Counter Strike was definitely starting to be a thing. But fighting games were always there, always there. And they always had that social construct of a tournament or at least a 1-to-1 matchup by putting the quarter on the arcade machine.
Yeah.
It's part of the lifeblood of the history of the fighting game community because that's the way the game is built. When it came to Smash and consoles and having it in your home and the competition growing into more of a larger community, what was it about fighting games that you think continues to translate and work so well within the vibrancy of tournaments today? Because even though there's so many things that are online and digital, and every tournament's gone digital because of the pandemic, there still is no replacement for that in-person 1-to-1 fighting game match, be it Smash, Mortal Kombat, Tekken. So what is it about that type of history and intrinsic nature of the game that you think translates so many years later as still a force to watch?
I think there's a lot of factors there. The in-person experience, it's a lot about community. It's a lot about discipline. It's a lot about friendship. It's a lot about personal growth, like all these factors that are outside the game, right? I think for me growing up, one of the biggest things was that, again, that competitive drive and the trash talk and the rivalry with your friends that constantly push you to be better. And it echoed or mimicked life in a lot of ways where you would run into a challenge or an opponent that was way better than you, that made you feel like you couldn't do anything, right? And you would beat your head against the cement wall for hours and hours and hours and not be able to take stocks or never be able to take games. And then you would go back to your training partner, who maybe you started at the same time, which was my best friend, Chet. We started playing the game at the exact same time, and then we would go back and battle it out, and I would win games, and then he would win games, right? And then we would both branch off into those brick and fight those brick walls on our own, and then we would come back and push each other a little bit farther and farther and farther. So there was a lot of that personal growth and development, and then you start to learn how to interact with people in a different way, right? Because oftentimes people are very emotionally charged in tournaments, and some people are cool, other people are laid back, some people rage. So you start to learn how to deal with a multitude of different people and personalities, and that's also something that's kind of, I don't know if it's lost or it's just different in the digital age, right? I think that it's a big talk in the NetherRealm scene right now about how all these Twitter warriors, like, they wouldn't say this if they were actually at a live event, right? Because now you're dealing with like the physical repercussions. And that was kind of instilled in me at an early age, right? Because like you can talk trash out on the floor or out on the on the football field or whatever, and then now you're in a fight, right? Whereas I think a lot of the gamer stereotype, they're not used to that discipline or that regiment or that physical confrontation or just like receiving that energy from people, right? And so it's harder for them to deal with it. I think this topic is like, it's really, there's so many factors that play into it. Yeah, it's definitely a complicated one, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves again, like once we get out of lockdown and actually get back to being in person.
Well, it's the same for me as a personal growth. The reason why I choose to stream Mortal Kombat 11 over any other game is because I feel the most personal satisfaction when I play it. I actually want to play it when I'm not even streaming, because I can see my measured growth of learning a new character, getting further in Combat League. And it's the similar attitude and emotional benefit of learning a new language or a new instrument. And I'm learning a new language right now with all these yoga poses and the Sanskrit and the ancient vibrations and all this stuff that I have to have memorized. And it's wonderful to see my personal growth within that pillar of learning this physical education in this wonderful world of yoga. And I feel that same type of growth within my physical response and timing and decision-making and perfection, or trying to perfect my performance in a fighting game such as Mortal Kombat 11.
Well, they complement each other, right?
They do. They absolutely do. And that's when you find that you're in the zone and you're not even overthinking or thinking about the move that you're going to press, you're just in the mode and timing it perfectly. It's that Zen type of quality that you can also reach in meditation. The biggest obstacle, it just feels sometimes for the rest of the world to understand that, is we're not running around and sweating. We're not playing a traditional sport in football or baseball where they're making these same decisions in the same amount of time, but it's requiring all of their physical prowess, where I have the comfort of sitting in my chair, but I still have to actively do something and make that decision. The difference is I'm doing it against somebody at the speed of light in another location, which is pretty miraculous and pretty new to the human experience, right? If you would have explained to somebody, hey, 100 years ago, I'm sitting in my living room in front of a giant window that has a crystal clear picture, and I'm interacting with that window, and it looks like real life. And I'm actually interacting with somebody who's on the other side of the country. And if they press a button, they'll move their avatar or their character within that window like that. This is sorcery. You get burned at the stake for stuff like this, right? So the sheer miraculous harnessing of electricity and energy and pixels into creating a competition between humans, I find to be so fascinating. And that's like the ultra meta of all this, sure. But I actually have fun playing and improving, like I do having fun learning a new dance move or learning yoga or playing a sport. But I have to have balance in my life when it comes to fitness, because I recognize that I am sitting down and doing this for most of the day or half the day. So that's why yoga is important to me, running, going for a 10-mile bike ride today. That's important for that type of balance. And that's where I feel that I'm at my happiest. If I'm playing Mortal Kombat all the time, I wouldn't be happy. If I'm not playing Mortal Kombat, unless it's for a specific purpose or I'm dedicated to something, I'm kind of like, oh man, I'm not getting my Combat League points. I'm not furthering my channel and building my channel. And it comes down to having a plan and sticking to that plan in order to build your content or to build your presence when it comes to media. And I think a lot of people in the FGC have recognized that recently, of how important it is to be consistent with your content and your media and your presence to build an audience outside of tournament winnings. And we see a lot of players that have been going to tournaments and putting so much of themselves into tournaments for so long. They're like, I don't want to travel to another event and get no money out of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's already a lot to unpack right there, right? Like I've said very, very early on that this isn't a sustainable career for 99.999% of people. And they're trying to make it, and I'm not going to fault them for trying to make it into one, right? It's like, it's their dream, go for it, right? But the cynical realist side of me is like, if it's a hobby, you need to treat it as a hobby and have backup plans or have contingency, right? And not ruin or throw your livelihood away for something that wouldn't exist, right? Now, I mean, that's hypocritical of me to say in some aspects, because like I took a risk, right? But I was also, going to school and trying to, preserve my career, and like I put in the hours, and it wasn't that I didn't, that I put in the hours and I hated it. It was something that I was doing anyways, right? And so it was kind of like, it was along the same path. I actually don't really like the comparison to traditional sports these days. And it's not that I don't think it's valid. It's that I feel that I just don't give a shit. Right? Like it's one of those things that I feel like we don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. And maybe there was a time and a place where you were trying to like gain legitimacy, but like the numbers speak for themselves, right? It's an alternate form of entertainment. It's played by all different types of ages and ethnicities and genders, and it's one of those things that it's its own thing, and it's okay to be its own thing. It's nice to compare, and because it draws more people in, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you're trying to hit a fastball or if you're trying to hit a one frame blink. There's a lot of things that I wish people would stop caring about, because it would just make them happier. And the balance aspect that you brought up of like learning yoga and learning a different language, I think those skills all complement each other, right? And it's a matter of like discipline, but also it's a matter of treating your psyche with respect to, where you don't need to punish yourself with working out every single day. Likewise, you don't need to punish yourself with sitting there in a chair and working for 10 hours a day, right? Like you can make compromises with yourself to be happy. And I think all those things actually like ripple and just make you happier overall. You talked about exercising, waking up in the morning. you completed a goal, which is like a lot of things. One big thing that a lot of people lost during the pandemic is they lost a sense of routine, or just like these minor victories in their life, you know. And we're talking like getting out of bed, making your breakfast, brushing your teeth, making it to the train on time. Like these micro victories, they all add up and build momentum, you know? So when you're doing all these things throughout the day, whether it's your learning language or your yoga practice or your exercise, you're building on momentum throughout the day. And then that, even like winning combat league points, attributes to that. And you feel like a sense of accomplishment, like you've actually done like you've actually done something, you know? And that just attributes to your overall happiness, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You know, I'm so glad that you brought up. I'm tired of comparing to other things. It can be its own thing. And that was a big thing for me to understand and fully embrace, especially looking back at my career and what I thought my career would be like by the time I would hit 35, which is just around the corner of, and what success was defined for me at a younger age in my 20s after college and moving to LA and auditioning and going through these things. And the more that I embraced doing my own thing, my own way, the more successful things turned out to be. And I would look at other mentors from afar, like roast master Jeff Ross, where he didn't know if he wanted to just be known as a roast master and keep doing these comedy roasts. But then Dave Chappelle told him, "You're so good at this, do it and turn it into a 5-lane superhighway." So when it came to sticking to producing events and hosting events or auditioning for sitcoms or to host for Nickelodeon, stuff like that, it was, why give up all this stuff that's making my dreams come true and accelerating towards what I thought I wanted and exposing so much of the Hollywood system to me, but we're doing it our way. And how bigger studios want to be a part of what we're doing rather than trying to force or plug into what's already there or compromise. And we got to experience all of that, Brett. We got to experience doing things our way. We got to experience compromising with big studios. And ultimately, we found out what made us happy and what actually was going to work in the future. So I think we really got a crash course in a lot of that stuff. So now we don't have to compare. We've done it. We've been it. We're our own thing.
I've been reading this book recently. It's called Extreme Ownership. It's by ex-Navy SEAL. His name is Jocko Willink. And I think the entire thing that you just mentioned, it boils down to one thing, and that's ownership, right? Because when we were coming up doing it, it was never a question of, oh, can we do this? We should ask the boss. It's like, no, we're going to do this because we know this is the right thing to do. And this is the resources, and we know what we're talking about, and we have a vision, and we're just going to execute it, right? And so you're taking extreme ownership of this product or this problem, back to Jeff Ross, right? Like taking more ownership of this thing that he's good at, like just realizing like, hey, I own this, right? Like, let me keep doing it and making it the best that I possibly can. Like that's super important. And it's something that we kind of forget these days, especially when you're kind of, fall off the road a little bit, or you have to report to a boss that maybe you don't respect, or maybe you had an argument with somebody and you no longer see eye to eye, you know. But instead of just like pointing fingers at the world, just own it and take responsibility. And if it bombs, it's your fault. And if it's a success, it's your fault, you know. But at the same time, like, you're going to find fulfillment, you're going to learn, and you're going to grow.
Yeah, we didn't have to really answer to a committee. It was let's get all the best of the best with Southern California talent, and let's build this together. And that's what we did. And that's why it set the bar. That's why the Pro League set the bar. But you were so instrumental in making that happen from behind the scenes, from the technical director side. And you did all the combos pretty much for combat class.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you and I were like super excited, obviously, of being able to do this and starting to click with the Warner Brothers team. But if you could go back and tell yourself how crazy things were going to get, what kind of advice would you have given yourself now that we're this far removed afterwards?
I wouldn't change a thing. I would go harder. I would, if I could give myself the lessons that I know now, because even episode 1, like if you watch Scorpion versus episode 24 or something like that, which was Kano, like we did 25 of them, I think.
Yeah.
I think is the number. Or maybe it was like 23, something in that ballpark. Just the level of precision and and value and just like squeezing every drop of time that we had, you know. And we put these strange arbitrary restraints on us just because we could. It's like the first ones were 3 minutes and 30 seconds and 0 frames, right? It was one of those things that like I am putting these constraints to make sure that it's the best it possibly can, right? And then of course we loosened up here and there where it made sense, but it was one of those things. It's like, no, let's put the most amount of discipline and constraints, because out of constraints comes creativity. It's a lot of times with the creative professionals where they have too many options, they get like, it's like option paralysis, right? And you end up not making anything. And that's the worst thing that can happen to you, is you have so many ideas and so many options that you just sit there and don't do anything. And then you just make zero headway, and you don't learn, or you don't grow, or you don't build your body to work, right? It's a huge missed opportunity. So for combat class and like ownership, right? Like, do you remember how that was made? Do you remember the original pitch? It was MK9. I heard about MKX. I went home, I recorded a 10-minute video in one take, and I sent it to you. And I was like, this is what we're going to make.
Yeah.
And it turned into what it is now, right? But it was
I remember the
MK9
breakdown,
tutorial.
And I said, let's do it with the follow the bouncing ball type thing for the graphics on the bottom for the combos. Because I kept thinking, okay, Brett is the master. I'm the student. What do I need to see as a student that's going to help me?
Perspective.
Plus, to build it from that perspective, plus the 3 different variations that we needed to include, and the puns. We had to have fun with the writing.
Yeah, and otherwise it would have went crazy.
We had to have fun with it. And I remember, was it Jason? We had one that had some sort of failure, like media.
Yeah, it was Jason.
Yeah, it was Jason. And then so I went to your apartment and we just decked it out, man. And we're sitting there writing the script, coming up with the combos, and then we were able to get it done. But
yeah, that was a scary one because he was pre-release. So we had to go to the headquarters to film it. So it wasn't like I could turn my Xbox on and re-record the footage. No, it was like we had it weeks in advance. Yeah. And then we got there and there was like issues with the build and we were already strapped for time. So automatically we get in there and we have like, I think 90 minutes or something like that. And everybody's already at a very high stress level. And I get home and check the footage and it's all corrupted. And I'm just like, fuck. I think I turned around Aaron Black in like 5.5, 6 hours because we still had to hit deadline, right? So I lost the entire Jason pipeline and I turned around Aaron Black in its stead. And I think we got Jason out like the following week, I believe.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Well, that's happened a number of times across a number of different developers where they have something that's not released yet. And we go to record and we're like, okay, we need to turn the music off. Like, oh, we don't have that in the build. I'm like, this is why video game developers aren't good at media. And that's why they hire outside sources, because they don't think of it. Right?
It's not their fault though, Josh.
But it's not their fault. I know. That's why they hire the experts.
Yeah. Their job is to make a good game though. So I hope that they're doing that and they're putting their full effort towards that, which in our experience, most of them have been. So
yeah, I mean, they can focus on that. We'll focus on the storytelling and the media.
Exactly.
But it had happened so many times that even when we would tell them ahead of time, okay, make sure it has this, and this. But when a company's dealing with so much and kind of, okay, this third party's going to come in and record some footage, it's kind of like the bottom of the list, you know.
They don't care about us.
I get it.
I mean, we're being realistic, right? Like,
no, they don't care until you have 1 million YouTube subscribers. Then they care.
Well, I mean, I think Combat Class overall had like something in the ballpark of like 12 million views or something along the lines.
Yeah. I mean, you add in Combat Class was at least 12, 13 million. And this is when we counted years ago.
Yeah.
Plus the 3 seasons all combined was like 27 million views. And again, that tally was probably from 4 years ago, and all those views have gone up. So highly, it was, to quote the people at Warner Brothers, it was one of the best digital assets they've ever seen, performance-wise, when it came to Combat Class.
Yeah, fist bump.
Boom, we did it, man. It was a lot of fun, but it also taught us how to create a pipeline and turn it over every week.
Yeah, for sure.
And to create,
you have to be organized, and you have to know what you're doing, and you have to. What's the term? Know when to drown your darlings, right? Like make those tough choices on when to cut stuff just because it doesn't fit. Even if it's gold, you have to leave some stuff on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. And then look at today. I mean, there was not a whole lot of resources on YouTube to break down combos for characters back in the days of MK9. There's some stuff that was coming around, and then MKX hit. We created pretty much the new standard, and from that new standard, we have so many new videos and breakdowns from so many creative people. But I always go to Noble Raptor. That's my number one source when I look at combos to learn new character, and to see all of the efforts that player has done with the guide. It just feels that you and I did our job, and now everybody else is enjoying these benefits, and it's quite a legacy where I don't have to feel like, oh, nobody's making guides anymore. Nope, it's handled. The community is handling it, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah. Like speaking of Raptor, and you talk about what I would do different, like that was one of the things that inspired me, right? And I feel like that's the big circle. It's like you make something, you pour your heart and your soul into it, inspire somebody to do something better, and then that energy comes back to you. And yeah, we would have created a bigger campaign. We would have had a universe surrounding it. We would have had Portal. We would have had destinations. We would have had more outreach. Would have had more amplification, because like the only viewership that we were hitting was the subscribers to those channels. It wasn't like we had commercials or ads for this. And so the fact that it hit that many people is pretty insane. So yeah, and I think it also attributes to the IP that we were working with, right? Like MK is lightning in a bottle. So.
Yes, it is, which is why I'm happy to work with that IP till the day I die.
Great guys.
Yeah, they are.
Really, it's a really great team over there. I miss them.
Yeah, me too, man. Miss Chicago. Well, you and your genius behind the Pro League was with us for 3 seasons, but you also had worked on a number of different games, including StarCraft. You and I go back before the FGC. We go back in our StarCraft days. So tell me about how you got your first job, professional gig in the world of video games and StarCraft and the NASL days, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I was doing broadcast TV, and I was still going to school. I think it was around, I think it was 13, right? NASL, 2013, 2014. Yeah. So it's been 9 years, almost 10 years, in that ballpark. Yeah. And I remember, I watched all the MLGs and all the StarCraft 2 events. I started playing StarCraft 2 the day it came out. Big Brood War player when I was a kid and stuff. So it very much fit into my style of game, like playing a lot of Smash, playing a lot of MK, playing a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and also StarCraft. Like these 1v1 very intense games where if you lost, it was your fault, right? It's it takes a certain type of gamer to compete in those, as we can tell, right? Like the numbers are much lower than a lot of other things out there.
Yeah.
And then I was working in TV, and when I went to college and I was watching all these events, I signed up for just like a resume website for TV professionals. It's just kind of one of those things that you would go through the motions and you would put them out just to kind of just see, right? And not expecting anything. And then I was out at a bar one night after a show, and I get an email on my phone from Sean at NASL.tv. And I was like, NASL, like, is somebody trolling me? Like, is one of my classmates, like, because all I did in class was watch MLG, right? And I read the email. I think it was around like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I remember it was pretty late. And he asked me to come interview, I think, the following day at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So I drove from my house all the way out to Rancho Cucamonga, where it was. It was about an hour away. And I interviewed at 3, and I did my first show at 5 for a World of Tanks broadcast the same day. And the first people I met when I walked in the door was, keep in mind, I was a big StarCraft fan, right? And I watched all the events. I walk in, Josh has his back to me, like working on spreadsheets. Frodan walks in front of me, like going to get coffee. Ben, Mr. Bitter walks up to me, and I was like, "Oh, Mr. Bitter, what's up, man?" And he shook his hand, and he just kind of gives me this smile, like, "Who is this kid?" Right? Roddy and Greetorp were over there playing World of Tanks because they were commentating and playing at the time, And so I just walk into this office with all these people that I'd seen on TV, and did my first show, and I just remember being in like the stand-ups afterwards. Everybody kind of grouped around, and I'm getting like this feedback and this critique, and I was like, guys, like I've been doing this a long time now. Like I work in TV stations. Like I'll give you whatever you want, but you got to tell me, And I think in moments like that where it's humility, but also sticking up for yourself and knowing what you're about, it like garnered a lot of respect with these people that I had only known from watching on streams, right? And I feel like that was one of the big catalysts was always coming in with a mindset of like service. You know, it's like I'm here to help make this better because I care about it. I'm not here to get rich. Like at the time, nobody was, you know, and nobody still is today. It was one of those things that I think this is awesome. I have a certain set of skills. Let me help you make it better, and let's all ride it together.
That was our NASL days, and almost feels like a blur.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, yeah, I moved out there for minimum wage after getting my bachelor's degree.
Yeah, cross country, right?
Cross country, yeah, to take that job. And then it worked out because we got that World of Tanks contract. But then when NASL folded, and then because ESL America was taking over, and I remember that you sent us a one sheet of notes after the first World of Tanks broadcast, correct? And then we sent that off to Sean and the producer. And we're like, yeah, we need to get Brett on board. That's pretty much what everything happened with. We had our very small team to get started because we got the World of Tanks contract to initialize the launch of the ESL America studio. So I was employee like number 4 or 6 or something like that, along with Rookkill, the other commentator.
Building your own desk.
Yeah, building our own desks was day one. Oh my!
In this warehouse of a building.
Yeah, that used to just store glass for auto stuff. I mean, dude, oh my goodness. We converted that place into something else. It's crazy to remember what it was like. Because once again, it was, okay, we're coming from a company that just folded in Southern California. Here's another company coming in. Here, we want you to come over. World of Tanks is here. That's where the money is. Let's go. And it was, okay, the who's who of the NASL days where we want to bring to ESL America. And that's exactly what happened. And it was you and Mike Ulacki and Cameron and a number of others that we had we had such magic there at NASL. We needed to keep the magic going at ESL America. And we did. Dude, we had some of the best people to have in that space hired at that company, which is why it was magic in a bottle for those 3 years that we were there.
Yeah.
Or, 2.5. But it's fascinating when you have the mix of people that are passionate about this. They know they can grow this into something bigger. If the money comes, great. If it doesn't, save something, at least what we're making now. And that type of attitude is what led us to have that success. It was when they would hire the big egos, or if a video game company hires somebody from television, or like, oh, they won Emmys in sports television. Great. A lot of that stuff doesn't translate.
Yeah.
That's where we get stuck in making these comparisons to traditional sports, because they think they can market and deliver this into the televised traditional sports medium, and that's never going to work. We're doing our own thing. And this younger generation, especially with what I've seen on the YouTube community for Mortal Kombat, it's growing every year. More people are tuning into tournaments. More people are active in chat. More individual streamers are growing in that platform, in that space. And that is where people are going to entertainment that are 16, 17, 18 years old instead of watching television, dude. So
yeah, it was an interesting transition, right? Because they wanted to bring in those experts for their craft knowledge and their expertise, but you needed to pair them with subject matter experts, which was us.
Yeah.
And I also felt like that was a lot of my responsibility jumping way back to NASL. Like Cam Dozer was delivering pizzas before he came into work with us, right? And he had a background in journalism, so he knew what was up, right? He knew how to tell great stories, but he didn't have the technical proficiency that he then later learned and built, right? Like the infamous NASL sound guy, right? Like I can name them. We know who they are.
Yep.
So I think a big part of that was just like being in a leadership role to just like mentor a lot of these people. Like, hey, here's best practices. I feel like that's what a lot of the TV pros brought in, but they didn't come with the right attitude. They came with like, I won an Emmy, right? Like, we don't care. Like, my team won an Emmy last month. I have a piece of paper, and that's all I care about, right? It's like I'm proud of the people that I work with, but it's not something that's sitting on my shelf, For us, it's all about competing and participating in this space that we love and that fuels us and that drives us. So those type of people were instrumental, I think, to building up a base level foundation of like best practices. But now the next level is that people are taking all these best practices and they're finding out ways to reverse engineer them and do them for cheaper and also more efficiently and by themselves. So that's where the boom that you're talking about, right, is like all these solo producers that are doing one man shows and they're building all their own stuff and they're hacking together solutions or coding it themselves, and like that's really exciting to watch.
It is. And it's, in a way, how a number of cable channels and shows, like the story of Wayne's World. They just hacked it together and did it on their basic local cable because of their passion for music. And then here came the man, and they wanted to make it bigger and all this other money. Just watching that human story play out in so many different mediums, to me, is great, because I don't feel as alone in the struggle, from a meta level of what happens when you inject this money and you lose the passion or the reason of why you did this. Now, we all want to get paid.
You don't feel alone now or back then?
Well, I would say because the old media would ostracize us or talk down to us or try to change their language to us. We're like, oh, you're the internet age and it's so different and wild. Like, the only difference is we get stuff faster. Like, I still like watching movies. I still watch the same shows you do. The difference is I want to watch it when I want to watch it. And just the disconnect and the realization of, oh, the internet shouldn't be something discounted. The internet is something that should be embraced, which is fine that we're having, different streaming services now. Right. So that type of, feeling this way of bigger money coming in and changing our space, that's not a new story. So when I can talk to people about that type of conflict, or like, oh, why did you leave LA? And said, oh, I felt I could make it on my own. I've seen too much dumb money. And they're like, oh, it sounds like the music industry 10 years ago, or it sounds like this industry so long ago. So in that respect, it's nice to be able to share that camaraderie with self-producers and other people that have seen bubbles and bursts in their own respective space. And everybody has seen the bubble burst because of the pandemic and what really has stayed strong. So let's talk about your current endeavors, Brett. I mean, you are working with Riot Games. Tell me, you left California to leave to a different country. So what was happening in your life to set up for this type of job offer and this type of move?
Oh, man. I was at Red Bull currently. I was working with the Red Bull esports team there, and there was a lot of changeover in the team and a lot of new ideas that were kind of injected. And like Red Bull, they're an energy drink company, right? And so,
and you were at Red Bull after ESL America for how many years?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. So I think the rough timeline was like 13, 14 was NASL, and then I went freelance for a real long time. I was working in TV studios as well as doing esports. I worked a lot with Valle as well. We talk about like my injection into the fighting game community. Again, service for hire. He needed some help at like Evo and whatnot, and just went out there, and then that turned into other events and a great friendship, right? And then I took the freelance job at ESL. And then after a year, got offered full time. I spent another year and a half there, so about 2.5 years. While I was full time, I got the job offer from Red Bull, and I turned it down because I had MKX and I had StarCraft 2, and I knew if I left those things, I would never get them back. And eventually, they left me. And then Red Bull came back to me with almost double the money, and I took it because I was ready to move on, right? And then I led a lot of the programs there. A lot of my expertise in the fighting game community definitely shown through. And I was working with Red Bull during the ESL times as well, producing all their StarCraft events and directing and, doing BlizzCon and those type of events. And then once we got to the cycle, the changeover in Red Bull, I was approached about the job at Riot, and they didn't tell me what it was at first. They just said that they were hiring for a German esports company. I was like, oh, well, I kind of know everybody, right? Like I can kind of take a guess. But it was always of the mindset of like just saying yes to a lot of opportunities, and just like when doors open, just no hesitation to walk through them. And getting hired at Riot takes a long time. It took me, I think, like 8 months or something, like 6 to 8 months, right? I believe. And it was one of those things that I was very open about the whole process with my colleagues at Red Bull, right? Because I was never a full-time employee there. I was a permalancer, and I helped out a lot of different products there, not just gaming and esports, but I did like action sports and stuff with them. So it was really exciting. It was a great place to work and really awesome people. And then when the Riot job started to crystallize a lot more, I had a chat with one of my bosses. So my boss's boss, his name is Charlie, great guy. And Charlie told me this story about how he was living in Seattle when he was about my age, and he was working at a TV station and making pretty decent money. And he had a girlfriend, and he got this job opportunity to move to New York. And he came back to his boss, he's like, hey, like this thing opened up and I just wanted to tell you as soon as it happened, I really like working here and I got a girlfriend and I got an apartment. And if you maybe just like bump my pay a little bit, and then I'd be like super happy to stay. And his boss said, if you don't take that job in New York, I'm going to fire you. And it was one of these moments that he didn't do it out of spite. Obviously, it was an incentive of like, this is an opportunity that you need to take. And I think that was kind of the same mentality that I had felt, but I couldn't really admit to myself, where this was an amazing opportunity, not as a TV or an esports professional, but just a great life experience, right? And moving across the country and moving to a different country is not easy. And like my time here hasn't been the easiest, but like it always gets better with time. I think if you talk to most people that move to a foreign country, they say it's anywhere between 6 to 12 months where you actually start to feel a bit comfortable. And for me, it took about eight and a half. And it was only because a lot of my colleagues from North America had come over to Europe because we were producing Worlds in Europe that year. So I get to work with all my colleagues, and I'm not worried about language barrier. And when you're working with foreigners, you feel like you need to slow your cadence down a little bit or speak more directly or just do things properly, right? It's not that they don't understand you, it's that internal fear that they don't understand you, right? And it's kind of illogical in some aspects. And from a guy that like prides himself on being articulate and some would book smart or whatever, right? The fear of like that I sound dumb is one that I have to battle. It's my own problem, right?
Yeah.
And then I've been working with this team ever since. Jumping way back to NASL again, when a lot of that staff had left, they created a vacuum because there was a German esports company called ESGN that had formed. And so some of my colleagues that I work with now worked at ESGN, which was another esports company that I think was around for like a year before it
like not
folded.
even a full year, dude.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then they bankrupt and didn't pay a lot of people and all this crazy stuff, right?
Frodan went there. Who?
Frodan, Elliot. There's a lot of honor talent that didn't get paid, like guys like Gutex. I think Tastosis they did some Street Fighter stuff there and didn't get paid. It was a weird time, right? So I arrived in Germany and been dealing with my own personal stuff, right? Just trying to stay sane and happy, especially with like the lockdown and things like that, right? And then just trying to recapture a lot of the things that I think brought me here in my career. And like we talk about ownership a lot, talk about temperament and discipline and that feeling of contributing, right? Like all these things that nobody's going to solve for you. These things that you need to figure out on your own, because they're the root of your own happiness, right? And if you're unhappy, you're not going to contribute, and it's a vicious cycle. You're just going to be useless, right? So a lot of things that I've been working out on my own, but I feel like things are getting better for me. So just trying to do the best I can and feel like I'm contributing to the team.
You're talking about the expertise you have behind the production line as a technical director, and also the multifaceted skills that you have as a storyteller in general. That does open up a lot of doors. And one piece of advice I received from Robert Clotworthy, who we both know, the voice behind Jim Raynor and StarCraft, who actually came to a few of our shows and did voiceover stuff, and also taught me that Blizzard really doesn't care about the voice actor.
That's not true.
Realizing that they're like, unless you're part of the Blizzard family, it was just real crash course of how Hollywood works and what it was like being a voice actor. But real good guy, also the voice of a number of other things. But he said, a door may open that you weren't expecting, or you really don't fully understand, but it'll get you closer to what you want. Go through that door. And I thought, okay, I will. And that was really good advice.
Mm-hmm.
The layman, the common person, especially from the video game development side, doesn't understand the necessity for a good director, I feel at times, or at least what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could define for us why a role or why your expertise is so vital to a live production, and how is it used for League of Legends with your production currently?
Yeah. So the role of the director, if you want to equate it to the train conductor, right? It's kind of getting everybody to move in the same direction. I don't direct here in Europe. We have a really great director. His name is Jack. He's awesome, right? Not only is he technically proficient, he's got great leadership skills, and he has a ton of built-in creativity. And he's been doing the league broadcast for a real long time, so he knows what's up, which is also very valuable, right? Like I've worked on production lines where I did a Street Fighter event in DC. It was the grand final, and I look over and my TD is asleep with his hand in his face, and I wanted to like drop kick him out of his chair. I was furious. So here in Europe, I work with a lot of very, very, very passionate individuals, which is also a big reason why I joined, right? We talked about the personal experience, but talking about DC and seeing the people, the production staff I was around, I was like, nah, I want to be around people that actually give a shit and actually care about what we're doing. And I think that Riot is definitely one of those places. People around me are constantly going the extra mile, and they have that pedigree and that knowledge and that intrinsic and that I'm gonna skip this word here. This deep love, intrinsic.
I have trouble with that one too. I'll tag team that one for you.
Yeah.
No problem.
So my job as a producer then is to facilitate all this genius around me, and that's, I feel, where my experience as a director lends it lends value to this, because you're constantly juggling a lot of plates, right? As a director, you're looking at a giant multi-view with all the camera feeds, and you need to be able to live tell this story, right? You need to essentially be a live editor and do a lot of different techniques, but it's also rallying people around you and make sure people aren't confused and getting people on the same page, so at least they kind of understand the mission. And it goes down from the way that you speak to the way that you plan to the way that you rehearse, and then all the crisis management of things that happen in between. So I think as a director, you need to be a leader first and foremost. You need to have a vision, because sometimes if you lack that vision, or you lack that snappiness, that decisiveness, that people sense that. It's an energy that's really hard to describe unless you feel it, especially in the control room. It's like a very high energy environment. And then you also need to have foresight and crisis management, because in a live environment, things go wrong all the time. And then you need to have contingency plans, and you need to be able to put out fires and still keep the ship moving, right? And then my role is, once things actually start to go wrong, to provide solutions and to give people options to bail out, or to deliver all the creative, so then this director actually has the paints to paint the photo, right? Or to paint the picture. So that's kind of where the distinction is now. It's a lot more like planning and pre-production work, which is cool. But it's also really nice to just be a technician and to have your fingers on the buttons, and to actually, to get what you want, because you're physically doing it, right? And I do miss that part about my job, because I hardly ever touch any gear. Any chance that I can to kind of slot in anywhere else, I'm more than happy to. And also, like, trying to disconnect my engineering brain of like how I would actually build this, right? Because I got a great team of engineers that know how to do this, right? And they're all German, and they can read the German instruction manuals, and I can't. So it's learning to delegate, learning when to let go of things, learning how to be happy when things don't fully go your way, but also constantly improving to convey your message as best you can to get what you want, right? At the end of the day, when things go wrong, it's on us, because we're in charge of delivering. We're in charge of delivering all the pieces of the show, so that people can actually make the show.
And the attitude of high energy, but having solutions ahead of time. It was always very important to me to see any obstacles or problems that could occur, and to have a plan or a solution for it. Mm-hmm. Or to have, that backup media, or I like to call them audibles, but our are changes that we'd have to make, and what we would do when Xbox Live or PlayStation wouldn't connect, or couldn't get these players to connect.
Yeah.
Which
Servers
would
are down.
happen.
Sorry.
Yeah, servers are down. I remember when we were still doing the Pro League on Xbox and the servers were down, and Snoop Dogg posted a video just so upset with Microsoft. It's like, wow, what's going on? The servers are down. And we just wanted to post that video from Snoop Dogg explaining the situation because it was happening to us. Luckily, it's few and far between, but that's a difficulty of, any medium of technology, be it esports, video game competition, is if the technology is not working, it's not going to happen. The competition is not going to happen. So with the pandemic and the changes to everything being online, how has that changed within your field of League of Legends? And has it been that much of a change since most of the competition is done online anyways?
Yeah, when the pandemic first, because it hit Europe before the States, right? Like places like Italy and whatnot were kind of ravaged, right? And so we knew that something was coming, but we just didn't know when. And we had like a pretty shocking moment. I believe it was summer, week 7 or 8. We have a 9-week long season, and we were ready to start the show. And head of esports comes in and says, "Hey, I need you to grab everybody together." And countdown timer was live on the stream. We had rehearsed. Everybody was in makeup. People were eating. Hey guys, effective immediately. Show's canceled today. We have to go off air. And so it was a huge shock, right? Our host came up on a single, read the official messaging. We went to a card and we went offline, and it's just like the world had kind of stopped, right? Yeah, it was a weird experience, and I kind of get chills just thinking about it too. Having a lot of experience in different places, working in TV studios and trucks and ESL and NASL and Red Bull and whatnot, I had seen kind of the gambit of different production setups. So when it came to getting the LEC back online, me and my other colleagues were kind of tasked with like, okay, let's come up with some battle plans on like how we would bring the show back, right? So like, here's plan A, B, and C, right? And one of the missions I was kind of put in charge of was how do I come up with this remote solution for the show? And like, especially with the fighting game community, remote's kind of in our blood. So yeah, I pitched some ideas, and we ended up working through a lot of the logistics, and we ended up getting a show up, and I did an LEC broadcast out of my apartment here in Berlin. And it was frightening, right? And it definitely didn't stay that way for a very long time, but it was kind of the genesis of like, hey, we can do this, right? This isn't new technology. Like, this is something that we can do. It's just the complexity in which our show was at. It was really hard to figure out what we could carry over, right? And then we ended up working through a lot of that season in remote environments. So casters at home, figuring out ways to send feeds back and forth, right? Low bandwidth signals, battling Berlin internet, right? Like there was a lot of hurdles. And then as health restrictions kind of lessened and the environment improved here in Germany, I think we were down to like 300 cases in the city in a population of 3 million. So things were looking really, really positive for us for a while before the holidays. And then the holidays kind of ruined everything. We were able to actually get back and use a lot of our studio with limited staff and a lot of health and safety precautions, right? And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is like, we're very careful. All of our crew gets tested. We have a lot of safety measures in place and stuff like that. So we're doing the best we can to kind of return somewhat to normalcy, but it's not how it was before. Yeah, and then we're just waiting, right? We're just doing the best we can. I feel like German people in general take it very seriously. I feel like there's a sense of civil duty, right? And of course, there's the naysayers and the people that are pushing back against it and think it's a hoax or think it's political, whatever. I feel like the common person is a bit more rigid and focused on trying to get us back on track, So that's nice to see. Whereas I kind of look back home in the States and places on fire, and I worry about my friends and my colleagues and when they'll get a small taste of normalcy again.
Yeah. Stay in Germany. How the tables have turned over the last 100 years. Stay in Germany.
Yeah. I mean, you say that, right? But born and raised in California, my soul is in Cali, man. Like, I may be physically here in Berlin, and it's nice for now, but I definitely I see myself back home eventually.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy now that we're at a year
Yeah.
of because you and I pretty much had the same about shutdown moment. We did the MK finals on the 9th,
Yeah.
which was a
It
year
was
ago
March, right?
yesterday. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It was around
And
the same time. Yeah.
or I think it was on the 8th, and I landed back home on the 9th. And then the next day I went to the grocery store and spent $1,000 on water and food because I knew the
Stocked up.
quarantine was coming. I knew it was coming, man. Warner Brothers executives canceled the live audience. And we at first were miffed, but
Mhm.
thank goodness they made that decision because it was the right decision to make. And
Yeah.
that's the wisdom of some of these older people. And they're like, we're not going to have any lawsuits of people's dead grandmothers on our hands. I
Yep.
don't care how much these Mortal Kombat players and fans are going to be pissed off. The answer is no. And that's the type of stoicism you need in leadership. No
Yeah.
matter how popular the opinion is going to be today, a year from now is the right decision.
Yeah.
And you need to have that foresight. And I'm glad that we had people to make that decision. I remember how pissed I was. And you have to let them vent because I
Mm.
remember I went up to Willie P's hotel room and I was just like, fuck, just, why? They're already here. They've already flown here. And then later that night, we all knew it was the right decision. You just got to let the emotions flow through you and do it off camera and talk about it amongst yourselves. And then
Yeah.
you're on board with the team and you stick to it. But that, the, the thought of being able to leave the country and visit Germany or to go up to Canada. You know, I can't even go up 2.5 hours north to go to Canada to visit Vancouver because just the shutdown of the border and to stay safe, which I'm on board on doing to stay safe. But man, if my country would have maybe took it a little bit more seriously, maybe travel be open up by now. I don't know. All I can do is do my best and stay healthy and get the vaccine when it's allowed to people my age.
Yeah. I don't know how political we want to be, right? But I think I always come back to leadership, right? That's the one thing from being away for so long is like it was so obvious about a vacuum of leadership that
Yeah.
And then just like how much it was politicized, I think it was really unfair like all around, right? And like you guys suffered for it, right? At the end of the day, it's the average man that takes the heat, I guess.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. I mean, the vacuum of leadership and bad policies and all that stuff we could talk about for days.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, what should have happened was they said, "Hey, everybody, do what you have to do for the next week, but we're shutting down.
Yeah.
You're going to get paid. You'll get at least 75% of your salary. We're going to take care of everybody, but we're shutting down." Everybody shut down.
Mm-hmm.
If people were alleviated by knowing they were getting at least some sort of paycheck, there wouldn't have been this much backlash to shut down or be anti-mask and all this other stuff. And now with the continued delay of checks and whatnot, it's like, whatever, dude. I mean, let's take care of ourselves and our neighbors. So we'll see what happens to, but it's a massive disappointment and also a revelation to so many other countries just how unorganized the United States of America is at the moment.
Fragile.
Right? Yeah, the crumbling empire. But you have seen it from that outside perspective. I mean, of seeing it here in another country. But you've been over in Berlin for what, 3 years now?
2 years, yeah. I got here January 2019. Yeah, and being here, you gain a lot of perspective, right? Just kind of being like able to zoom out. I think it also put a light on a lot of flaws, like this idea of like I need to work to be healthy and to get health insurance is fucking bullshit.
Yep.
I remember when I left the States, I moved here end of January, and so my health insurance ran out the first of the year, and I have ulcerative colitis, which is a autoimmune disease with my gut, and so I take medication every day, right? It's one of those things that I need to take care of. So I'm moving across the country. I'm going to take my 30 pills or my 60 pills. You know, this is my 2-month supply. And pharmacy gave me my pills just fine. I show up in Germany. A couple months later, my mom sends me, she's like, "Hey, you got a bill from the pharmacy for $600. What did you buy?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And it was my 60 pills or whatever for my gut medication. The same medication here in Europe, in Germany, I pay €7 for. It's actually like corrupt how like how ridiculous it is, you know? And you talk about, you know, just like you want to be the best country in the world, you need to have less losers. You need to have people that are healthy. You need people that are educated, you know? So yeah, it's kind of, it's flawed, man. It's rigged. The
It's rigged.
system is
Yeah.
rigged.
It's so rigged, you know, and one would think after a pandemic, the number one thing the country could do would embrace a healthcare system. Call it the American healthcare system. Everybody's covered. $42 a month is what you pay out of your taxes. It's everybody's going to get more money in their paycheck at the end of every week, anyways, when you have to remove it from the qualifications of employment. You said it best, man. It's right there. All the programs, all the plans are right there that make sense and create a better system for all of us, better health for all of us. And in the end, we're all paying less money. Healthier people, more money in our pocketbooks. Who would be against that? The rich, the ones that profit the most out of having not a healthcare system, but a sickness system, just keeping people sick. It sucks, man.
We need to put a big disclaimer. I'm a moron when it comes to this stuff, so please don't take my advice seriously.
Yeah.
I'm entitled to my opinion. You could also think my opinion is stupid, and I don't care.
The attitude of my mother is one accident away from being bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, does that sound fair? Does that sound fair to anybody's mother if they have one act? That's not even their fault.
Yeah.
If an accident happens and they have to pay and they're bankrupt for the rest of their lives, that's not taking care of our elders. That's not taking care of our veterans. That's not taking care of, you know, I think about that from the most logical standpoint that I think anybody, left, right, big city, small town, if something happened to your mother, your grandmother, should they be bankrupt because of it?
Yeah.
And it's like
for things that are out of their control, right?
Yeah. And the answer is no. And they're like, well, that's just the free market. Like that. What kind of freedom is that?
Yeah. Because you got dealt a shitty hand in life, right?
And yeah. So that's, I've actually stopped watching a lot of political shows that I used to. And I
have a question about that, actually. Do you think that's because the election is over and people don't care anymore?
Yeah. I mean, this was the greatest reality TV experiment of all time by having a reality TV star become the president. And he was not the problem. The problems were happening beforehand and the problems are happening afterwards. And so now people thought, oh, here's a chance to really start a revolution and change everything. All it really was a bunch of people being so angry with somebody that got away with all this stuff that they wanted to punish everybody else except him because he was the president. And so it made liberals into bullies and conservatives into bigots. And so that's why I decided I don't want to be part of really this anymore. And I started listening to Tim Dillon. He's a wonderful comedian, so entertaining, but he's able just as the court jester say the truth. And you realize, you know what? Yeah. I started to become too much of a bully when I would think about conservatives. And that's not gonna change their thoughts. What am I doing? So I let go of that, and I realized the number one thing that I want to fight for is Medicare for all. That's the number one thing that I feel the whole country can agree on. Let's get that done first. Then if we want to talk about other stuff later, okay, we can talk about it, but let's get that done. And so that's where I've put my efforts, dude. And I'm so much happier. Instead of waking up going, oh, what did the Republicans do today? I don't fucking care anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, that's social media, dude. It's toxic, right? And it's toxic in every sense of the word. And I've gone on huge rants about that recently, and I don't know if it's because I've gotten older or what it is, but it's designed to make you mad, and that's what it is, and that affects you in ways that people don't realize because it's a thing you don't, just like poison, you don't realize it's affecting you until it's gone, right? And you know what's better than than a little bit of poison is zero poison, no poison at all, right? And so that's one of the things that I just kind of cut it out from my life entirely. I think it was January 2020, I got rid of Twitter and Facebook on my phone. And one, I wanted my time back. It's just like, it's a huge time sink. I still read it, right? But I'm not chained to it, right? No. I don't care about it anymore. And part of it goes to not willing to participate in the divisiveness that you mentioned, right? Like me against you, because I think it's stupid. I think so many of us have so much more in common, and the only things that get amplified and retweeted are the extremes. And it's what drives people to anger, and anger incites you to share because you're like, fuck this guy, it's us against him, and then it echoes and it explodes, and you don't actually get any reasonable opinions out of it anymore. It's always these extreme takes. That, and people just wanting to be different, and people just wanting to be rude, and they've figured out subconsciously that this negativity is what is going to give them this dopamine hit of the Twitter notification. I just think it's all stupid. Just being able to step back from it and just say, like, you're being played, bro. Like,
Yeah.
stop participating. You'll be happier. I promise you.
This it's fascinating for my personal journey over the last year to focus more on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Knowing that negativity brings more views. And in some of my vlogs, I was honest. I had engagements with some people. I saw some things I was upset about with the media. And I'd express that in the vlog. But then afterwards, I'm like, you know what? I don't want my art or my content to be just focused on so much negativity and bad reviews over movies that sucked and why did it suck and all this other stuff. I don't want that. That's not what I feel I need to add more to. There's plenty of people already doing that.
Exactly.
And as I was trying to find where do I fit and what is my channel and who do I want to be, I just started to realize I just want to be me and do whatever the fuck I want. I kept thinking of Bam Margera in the show on MTV at the end in the intro. He's like, "What do you do next, Bam?" He's like, "Whatever the fuck I want."
Yeah.
I always remember that at the
What
start
a
of
legend.
MTV. Yeah. And I thought, there's something to that. There's something to that. I would rather be authentic first than anything else. And the more that I started to see that I was in an echo chamber or in a bubble listening to this progressive media or this or that, and just every day getting upset about this senator said this or this senator said that, I thought, I'm just adding to the machine. And what is the machine? For them to get more donations from me or more of my time to watch their ads.
Yeah.
Not focused on solutions. When's the last time one of these outlets actually broke down the HR bill that Bernie Sanders went through to try to get Medicare for all paid? No, they're just talking about, they just keep making videos about this conservative pundit they don't like. And like, oh, look what he said this week, or look what he said that week. And after the end of the election, it felt like we all did our duty or whatever. And then the Capitol riots happened. Then you started to just realize, okay, social media, QAnon, all the bullshit, the fake news has taken over a certain group of people that are triggered and angered by it. And all the counter responses and the liberal bias are sharing their triggered responses and anger over this group. And it just turns into a vicious cycle. It's never going to end. And the people that benefit the most are the rich once again. So I think maybe QAnon is just part of this whole orchestrated play for us to continue this craziness, for more eyes and eyeballs on advertising dollars for media. I mean, in a way, having the previous president antics and all, and the bias against him in the media, continued to build eyeballs on the media because it was watching a circus. And now that the circus is over, all of those views are going to go away. And I think a lot of people who grifted and made money or built their channels on YouTube based off of that tension and that riff, I don't know what they're going to do next because it's starting to just disappear. And again, Tim Dillon talks about this. He says, after this pandemic, nobody's going to give a fuck about politics. We're so over fighting. We're so over yelling at each other. We're just going to all come out and realize, fuck them. Fuck the Democrats. Fuck the Republicans. Do you need food? Do you need some water? Do you need help? You're pregnant. Hey, if I give $10 and you give $10 and you give $10 once a month, we can make sure that she has a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby delivery. Is that cool? That's what these town halls were about during the upcoming election. When you saw with Bernie Sanders, when Republicans would ask if that system existed, would that happen? Everybody's like, yeah, we'd want to take care of our neighbors in a system that worked. You know, where it feels like my funds, my taxes actually go to the health of my neighbors.
Yeah, for sure. You're willing to sacrifice a little bit because it's you as a responsible person, you know what it takes to live, right? You're not out there driving a fucking Lambo, right? Like you know what you need to live, and if it's going to help somebody else, even if just a little bit, and just a little bit goes a long way, right? We're not talking about bailing people out that aren't willing to work. No, we're talking about bailing people out that need some help, that just are unlucky or put into shitty situations, right? How do you have less losers? Make sure they're educated, make sure they're healthy, right?
I read a really good article that allowed me to breathe.
Mhm.
And it was about how the 40-hour work week is a product of a bygone era where there was an at-home spouse that didn't have an income but worked a job, and that job was being a homemaker.
Sure.
Now that I have in the last 3 years balanced 3 jobs at one time, plus running a small farm, which is this house and the studio, and trying to modernize it and get rid of all this furniture, like just so much that I felt like, what's wrong with me? It seems like everybody else is able to maintain a home and a full-time job or multiple jobs. And I realized how when you start to break up the time you have to commute, your workouts, preparing your meals, you realize you don't have all this time if you're working a 40-hour work week plus everything it takes around it. And it allowed me to really accept that I'm not less than in the working world if I'm not hitting 40 hours, and how much happier I am by balancing or working 20 to 30 and having time for fitness or having multiple part-time jobs, part-time gigs, and how that's conducive for me and my lifestyle way better compared to that 40-hour work week chained at the desk. And really seeing that from a much different perspective of, oh, I'm less than, I'm a failure because I can't hit this, of, oh no, you're trying to follow a template that's not impossible for a bachelor, or
Sure.
any single person with all of these extracurricular activities and trying to take care of a house.
Yeah. Not to say you're not disciplined, right? But I feel we're exaggerating, right? Like there are ways to make this possible. It's not the best way to live, right? As to your point, it was built for the system of two. And that's also one of the fallacies we talked about, healthcare and things like that. It's also one of the things that I've uncovered since being away from the States and being here in Europe, is Europeans work to live and Americans live to work. And it's fucked up the way that we were programmed that way because of all these things that you talked about, right? Like, I need to do these 40 hours a week. No, I need to do these 70-hour weeks because that's going to get me my promotion. It's like, no, you're killing yourself and you're not productive, and you're actually like, you have no life, and you're ruining everything else around you in terms of your personal health and your fitness and your mental health and your relationships and your time off, and you're just disconnecting from technology. Like, there's so many other facets of your life that are being sacrificed for a company that doesn't give a shit about you. And I was talking with my brother quite a bit recently because he's 4 years younger than me, and he's falling into the same traps that I did, right? Except when I turned 26, I got a full-time job and I was safe. He turned 26 and took what he thought was a full-time job to get him health insurance, and it was not what it was, and he was let go after a week, or I think he quit after a week, right?
Dang.
And so it wasn't to any fault of him. He got dealt a bad hand, right? But now he's starting to deal with some health issues, and he's put into this manager role at a restaurant where he just feels like he's breaking his back and that he can't survive, and he's having panic attacks because all this news about the health and safety issues, and if he gets COVID or his coworkers get COVID, what's going to happen? It's like, it spirals out of control so fast. Just like these worries and these stresses that are put on you that you don't realize are there until they're gone. And that's a big thing, is like, a lot of people don't realize the things that are pulling them down until they take them away from themselves. And it's really hard to identify what those are. It's been a couple months. I haven't drank. I've been way away from social media. I've been more disciplined with my workouts and stuff like that because I'm chained to a desk from work from home, right? And just these little things that all ripple into just make you feel like a better person, right? And you have your own choices, right? You can do whatever you want, but just realize that everything that you do it has an effect, and sometimes you don't realize that effect until you take that poison away.
Very true. And a lot of people have those New Year's resolutions, change something about their life, and if they do stick to it, they realize, I do feel lighter. Oh, I don't feel the sense of dread waking up and checking Twitter for the first thing I do in the morning, on my phone. I remember one of these retreats I went on a long time ago. It feels like a long time ago, where I overheard two people talking, but this phrase never left me. She said, I can't believe how happy my friend is now that he got rid of his cell phone and just has a landline phone. And I thought, doesn't have a cell phone. How does he survive? And I thought, that actually sounds really nice. It's just
I could do it, right?
a landline
You start
phone
to like,
yeah. I'm like, wait, I could do it. Like with
challenge
the messaging
accepted.
service. Yeah. And then check my emails at night, you know, or find a lunchtime. And like, you just think of, yeah, it's totally feasible. It's totally possible. What if I tried it? And then, yeah, so that maybe one day.
And then the other side of the spectrum is Elon Musk putting a microchip in your brain. So
yeah, the other side of the spectrum. Well, God, I know I've quoted Tim Dillon twice, but I'll do it a third time.
Yeah. He's great, by the way.
The greatest thing about death is I'll never have to read another tweet.
Very true.
I think about that sometimes. I almost got hit by a truck on a bicycle today. And I think that's what went through my mind right before I swerved out of the way. It's like, no more Twitter. No, I better live. I
mean, why wait till death when you can stop reading Twitter now?
True. I have it on my phone still, only because I get DMs from people occasionally because they prefer to communicate that way. But I don't have Facebook on my phone. And I will find myself hopping on Instagram, be like, oh, cute model photos. Okay, what am I doing? Bye. Or I'll post something on mine for a second and then let it go, not respond, not care how many likes get to it. And then I will, then it's a nice little kick of endorphin, but I recognize what's happening when I'm doing it of, oh, you just got this so you feel better about yourself. Are you doing this for you, or are you doing this to build your brand? Is this part of your job, or is this part of satisfying your ego? Is it one and the same? Kind of, sort of, but I have to have a goal of why I'm posting this. Am I posting this because I want to be validated by other people? No, I'm posting this because I'm growing numbers. I'm just trying to grow numbers.
Yeah, I realized I was holding myself to a lot of those same standards, but I don't actually need it. And that's where like the you have to be honest with yourself sometimes, is like, is this actually the tool that I needed to do, or is this the correct tool for the job?
Yeah, you know,
building your numbers, building your platform. I think that's, everybody would say you need to have a social media presence, but is that accurate? How many platforms? I mean, is it possible to grow a channel with no social media?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't do TikTok. People are like, you got to jump on TikTok. No, I'm good. Everything, all the good shit winds up on YouTube. So if I had to turn off Twitter and Facebook or everything, if there was one program, one platform I would still roll with, it would be YouTube, because I watch all my favorite stuff there, my favorite comedians, favorite clips, music.
Yeah. I think the argument is the age demographic you're going after when it comes to TikTok, right? And goes back to your goals, because now you're talking about finding out where people play and like just actually like putting your efforts towards that, right? And I'm not in touch with TikTok. I don't really know what it's about. I don't really care. But I think at some point, your job is not to learn TikTok, but then to work with somebody that already knows it, right? So we talk about our experience in esports and how you had these industry professionals that have this technical expertise. Now you need to find the next generation of subject matter expert, and then the cycle continues. 10 years was a long time ago.
Yeah, true. But a part of me feels like this is just Vine 2.0, where all the good stuff was coming to YouTube, and then Vine got bought out by Twitter, and then it shut down.
But there's no new ideas anymore. Everything is the same shit. It's just recycled, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why all the good shit comes to YouTube. It's like, okay, it's been done.
All right, you win.
Yeah. Oh, that was amazing. I'll find the clips on YouTube. Like, it just, to me, especially with looking at new platforms, or other people have approached me with creating content on other platforms just to experiment, and I'm down to do it. But everything winds up on YouTube. Like everybody that streams on Twitch, their VODs, their best moments on Twitch, they put it on YouTube. So that's why I fuck with YouTube the most. But I'm jealous of you, man, that you're able to have that removed from your phone. I'll work on the Twitter removed from my phone. I'll see if I can make that happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you think that you need to be communicated via DM. Like, tell that person, hey, be a grown up, send an email.
Dude, oh my God. Working with some of these players, they respond way faster on Twitter, and I think email is just a bygone way of communication to them sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends, right? If you're asking how somebody is, right?
I prefer email more formalized. But if it's a quick, hey, can you do this? I get it.
Yeah, I mean, and just don't expect an answer within 20 seconds, right? If you don't read it until an hour before you go to bed, then so be it, right?
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
end of the day, if it's super important, they'll figure out a better way to contact you.
Very true. So, what is it about League of Legends do you think allows you guys to keep rock and rolling over there? This game has been going on for a while.
10 years.
I've hosted for it. I've produced for it as well.
Mhm.
It's seems like it's going strong. So, what is it about the game that's going strong over in Europe? And what do you think some of the protocols or changes that you've made to today's show will stick with the show when things go quote unquote back to normal?
Mm. I think promotional efforts and long-term strategy is something that I've become not necessarily more involved with, but I've like had a bit more clarity on, because I always had these tendencies and like talk about playing like 40 chess, right? Like I did things for a reason. I always said that a lot of the things that I did, it was never by accident. There was always a reason for it, right? And then just being more deliberate with that, but then also unlocking other teams to kind of collaborate efforts. So like a lot of like internal communications and things like these where we're actually like all moving towards the same goal rather than like let's all meet in the middle, everybody break. It's like no, we're like flying V, right? Mighty Ducks. I think that's like a really positive thing that's going to come out of the pandemic.
Mm.
In terms of what makes us popular, I feel like it's just the variety of content that we have. It's the inclusion of other leagues. It's the honestly the sheer production value that goes into a lot of our products from all different types. Like we're talking not just video game coverage. Like we make music videos. We make a cold open every single week prior to the start of our show that talks that can be super serious. It could be hype. It could be comedic, right? We have interesting guests. We have a lot of different voices. We have a tremendous amount of regional representation with all these different countries around Europe, right? About all these subject matter experts. And we have a team that's made it to quarterfinals or finals back to back years, right? So we have like super high quality League of Legends gameplay as well. So we have a lot of everything, to be honest. um, and it all comes back to being around super smart, passionate people that really care about it, and it shows. Like the fact that these people act, I can't put into words how amazing it is to see some of these professionals at work. It's like it's truly remarkable. Um, and that's not when everything is going right, but when things go wrong too. Like the efforts on pivot and changes and the extra hours that they put in. Not to say that everybody should do that, but they're willing to make concessions, and they're also willing to provide alternate solutions. And it's a pleasure to work with this group. Honestly, it is. Can't say enough good things. So I think when things come back, like having all of these efforts and our focus on our long-term strategy is only going to get stronger, right? Because now we have humans, and you can tell so many more interesting stories on a regular basis and incorporate them in ways that we just simply don't have access right now. And it's not to say that it's impossible, it's just harder, right? From just a workflow standpoint, from just an access standpoint, and health and safety and all those things. So I think once we're able to just be able to sit in a room together, right? Like that's where all these lessons that we've learned are really going to get cranked up to 11, I think.
And speaking of ownership, League of Legends, Riot Games really took over ownership of the competitive scene after a number of years where MLG and other um, third-party tournament organizers had put together events. And I hosted for the first ever League of Legends event in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2011.
Yeah.
I remember the little triangle stage that they had made, and still no replays back then. They were still working on an observer system that was a little bit buggy. So we're going way back in the infancy of this game, which really was built as an idea off of WoW PvP of like, hey, what if we just make a dedicated WoW PvP type game with these characters? And then people that kind of got tired with WoW PvP heard about League of Legends, had played Dota in the past, and then that's how I got exposed to it, and then fell in love with it and played it a lot. And to see that it's still going strong is great. What I see sometimes in the conversations of people is the economy around League of Legends is so strong. And I believe it's strong because it fits within a demographic of video game developers and players with free to play. microtransactions, a lot of items, a lot of skins, a lot of ways to customize. And Riot Games will have your free-to-play players or somebody that spends about $5 a month on something, and then you have your whales that buy everything. But that money continually is coming in for this type of gameplay, this type of style, which allows League of Legends to have such ownership and amazing production and amazing economy around this. Compare that to a game like Mortal Kombat, where it's a $60 game or $100 if you're buying the whole package and Aftermath. One purchase. Now they're starting to have more microtransactions. But you and I were there when we brought the microtransaction, let's raise funds for the Pro League with the Blue Steel Sub-Zero skin.
Sub-Zero and Ermac.
Yeah, and then Ermac for Season 3. And that is what funded Season 2 and Season 3, were those sales. We don't really see that with Mortal Kombat 11. Why is it, do you think, there is that type of divide? And will we ever see a console game have the type of economic income as League of Legends, or do you think that can only exist on console or on PC? Excuse me, it can only exist on PC.
Well, games like Fortnite and whatnot, they're cross-platform, right? And they kind of leverage the same business model. When it comes to fighting games, I don't know what is holding people up, and it could be the rapid development cycle. It could be wanting to keep the IP fresh, right? Like NetherRealm, as an example, was on that kind of 2-year cycle between Injustice and Mortal Kombat. Since that's been broken now, yeah, we'll see what the team has in store. But honestly, I couldn't guess. It also could be a factor of just the technology that they're working with, right? Like, I'm not a game developer, so I can't really say like, hey, does this platform even support this? Or, hey, Warner Brothers, do you have a whole department set up to actually like facilitate this microtransaction and this volume, or this volume of inventory coming in and out, and how does that work, right? Like, what are the legal stipulations for that? Like, how are you putting safety and guardrails in place? Like, there's a lot of questions that I have that I don't have the insight in how something like that is built, right? So I'm not like fully suited to have that conversation. But it is interesting to think about the people that we've convinced. Are they the right people to actually like champion it, or have we just not educated the right people, right? And that could also be very much the problem, where I think a lot of people see the benefit of it. There's no denying it, right? Like, they saw the dollars. Like, it's not a question that it doesn't work. It's just a matter of if it's worth the effort, and who's going to lead this, and does it fit into our production pipeline, and am I legally safe to do this, right? Like, I don't know what that business side looks like.
Well, the number one thing to overcome was the dedication of the developers to create the items. And they had to find which item they felt that could actually add to the campaign, which is where the Blue Steel Sub-Zero skin came from. They had already made that skin. And then after we had told them we can create this type of program, then they're like, okay, we'll make the funds for the purchase of that skin go towards it. And then Warner Brothers did the Eternal numbers, and they hit us up a month later going, holy shit, this did very well, so well that it's going to fund 2 more seasons. So the people that were there saw the numbers and they were convinced. But the
Are those people still there?
Only one that I know of, Bonka. But Bonka should know, because Bonka was working under, I forget the gentleman's name. I think his name was Brent or Brad, but he was great. But then he took a job over at Blizzard a little while later.
And I think Bonka went on to do something outside of games too, right? So it's one of those things that, like, you educated them, and then they had gone out, and like the knowledge is lost.
So we're still educating. And, you know, I've talked to Derek Kurtzig about this too, of having this. And honestly, Mortal Kombat 11 has had more microtransactions than I can think of previous games, especially with the latest big one with the movie skins, having the actors from the original film come in, from the 1995 film. Imagine it was amazing. It was great. And they did a great job. I mean, Christopher Lambert as Raiden with all the interactions, especially up against Rambo and others. I'm thinking, this is awesome. This is what we want. So more of this, please. And especially if they're able to tie it into, just have a tower graphic and show, hey, for this Combat League season, where you can either earn this skin in Combat League or you can buy it. Whoever buys it, here's where the money's going to go to. And you show the tower where the money goes. And people are like, hey, I help fund the final competition, the pro competition, or this month's finale. You know, it's small little things like that. But again, it takes the time for the designers, for the developers to do that, they have to justify the time, the development time for it. And they're developing an entire game at the same time as well, right? So that type of planning has to be done at the beginning of the pipeline. So we saw it with the tournament shaders for Injustice 2, but we really haven't seen anything dedicated to help fund the pro competition. But anything that's inside of the game is crucial and should be the number one thing. I will say, though, it's been fascinating to see and uplifting to see Matcherino and other platforms help add to the prize money by people participating. And it just shows that there is a gap, a vacuum of that type of audience participation to add to it, because it's worked so well in League of Legends and Dota and other games where you see what's at stake and that the efforts of the audience and the fans have added to that prize money. So we'll keep being advocates for it, man.
Yeah.
We'll keep trying.
One thing that stands out to me though is just transparency, right? Like, what's to say the example of the movie pack? What's to say that's not funding a lot of this stuff and we just don't know about it, right? So that also could be it, right? If these things are happening behind the scene, we just don't have visibility, which is a very possible reality, right? Because I feel like a lot of those core designers that you had mentioned, like, they get it, right? They understand the value. And to your point, right, it does take a lot of man hours and effort and planning and strategy. And you've been to NetherRealm. You've seen how small that team is. Like, it's a very, very lean and mean team, but they're amazing, right, at what they do. And to ask more of them, I don't know if the full product would suffer, right? Because at the end of the day, their job is to make a great game. Their job is not to create this microservice business model that some person had, just dropped on their desk, right?
Yeah.
Kind of need to figure out exactly how you would start up that new work stream and make people accountable and give it, leadership and make sure that it actually can fit into the rest of the ecosystem without destroying what made you popular in the first place.
Well, this is the natural evolution of the ecosystem, to see so many different tournaments that are self-funded or fans of helping to fund, like the Console Gaming League, what Mr. Aquaman does, and other people.
Yeah.
Funding my own tournaments, but then now I'm having fans and viewers start to donate to my stream, and I tell them, hey, I'm keeping track of the donations. We're building the channel, but if you support the channel, I support the artists and I support the players. So that's what we're building together. And if Warner Brothers and NetherRealm can't do it from a grand level, I can do it from a small level. And it's those type of efforts that make the difference. Yeah. And if I can't convince them to do it from the top down, then I'll do it from the ground up. And that's how stuff will change. You just got to do it on your own.
That's the way it's always worked, though, right? You had to start building something, right? Because if you say, hey, we can do X, Y, and Z, they're just like, oh, I can do option X, Y, and Z. I got all these options on this buffet menu. None of them really sound awesome. But you're like, no, I'm actually going to go with X. I think this is the way to go. We're going to build it. I'm going to show you why it's the best, right? And then that's where you get people to join your team.
Ownership, decisiveness. Yeah, that's right, dude. That's right. Well, I want to tap a little bit more into your thoughts about the current state of fighting games, since you are able to be separate from the scene when it comes to your income and your day-to-day schedule, because it's different when you're working every day or trying to come up with a better show or combat class when you're entrenched. But now that you are a pillar of the community and always the professor, but at the same time don't have to have both feet in it, what does the fighting game community need? What are your notes? What is your critique right now for improving?
And you're not going to like me here, like what I have to say. And it's like, because I have been away, I've purposely taken a step back, and it's not because I don't care. It's because I feel that's what's best for me. It's like when I realized that I was no longer in a position of influence, it made no sense to poison my thoughts or to punish myself when I could no longer make an impact. So I purposely kind of took a step back. It's not to say that I don't care about it, right? And it's kind of a hard thing to say because I'm like wearing a combo breaker hat, right? It's like very much part of my who I am, I think it's really disheartening to see communities tear themselves apart for nothing. Smash, I think, is especially guilty of this, where they fight to be king of the ashes. Like, there's so much internal fighting, and then Nintendo doesn't care about them, and there's no money to be made, but they're still just tearing each other down and not trying to build anything positive. They care more about their Twitter hits or their Patreon rather than the people around them, and it's like, I understand you want to try and build something and make some money out of this, right? But at what cost? What the scene needs, I think, it's a heavy dose of reality, man. It's like sometimes just things are not going to work out, and it's really sad to say about that with something that I care about. But like, not everything is meant to be a full-time career. Like, you're not going to be you're never going to be the next, I'm not going to say never. You're not going to be the next LeBron James, right? Because it's just, there's a lot of missing pieces there to make this successful. And the current climate right now, people are not taking steps towards what it would take to get there. And it's because, I don't know if it's because of, it's not because they don't care, or maybe it's because they don't know, right? Or maybe there's no uniform vision on how to make it better, because there is no blueprint on how to make this successful. And I don't know what that blueprint is, if it exists. Like, think about the NFL and NBA and NHL, like these professional sports leagues, tennis, whatever it is, PGA, like, how did they actually grow to this level of legitimacy? And I can tell you, it wasn't from people talking shit to each other on Twitter. Like, it didn't exist back then, right? I just don't know. I don't know what the right steps are to take to bring legitimacy. All right. You can attack it from a bunch of different angles. You can attack it from the way that events are run. I think there's a lot of great events out there. I think there's a lot of bad events that hinder the progress that good events are making. I've been to events where they put up plywood up on 20 feet up in the air, and they put their camera guy up there, and I said, hey, please come, like, this whole place is getting shut down, right? Like, somebody falls off there, like, you're not worried about paying out your tournament winnings, you're worried about $1 million lawsuit, and that undermines all the hard work and effort that these legit tournament organizers put in to make sure that people feel safe and that they're doing things by the book, right? Talk about like the way that people speak to their developers, and it's never in a constructive way. It's always gimme, gimme, gimme. The level of entitlement is just really, really sad to see. A lot of people talk about how there's so many people that join channels just to talk trash about games that they don't like. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you hindering everybody else when you're obviously unhappy? Go do something else. Nobody's forcing you to be here. I don't know, man. There's a whole lot of underlying issues. I think that it's really hard to kind of tackle them all one by one. It's hard to prioritize them as well. I couldn't tell you what's my tier list of problems in the FGC. I couldn't break that down for you.
Well, these Twitter beefs, when sometimes I'll be on Twitter and I'll see somebody like, oh man, I wish my community was more this, more that. And I'm like, I'm not seeing all this beef on Twitter, probably because I'm not following the right people. But also, that's not where my validation nor my value is. My value comes from the body of work that I love and embrace. Mm-hmm. But what's difficult for a lot of these people is that their body of work and their efforts to win these tournaments hasn't brought them to the level they thought they would be. And so they're coming from a place of anger and disillusionment and grizzled, is because they've been here, they've been grinding, and they're not where they thought they would be. And I think that's just the overall nature of the entertainment industry. Like I was prepared to have that type of outcome as from a young age, knowing that I wanted to be an entertainer. And many of these players don't understand that they are entertainers. Yeah, you're playing a game, but you got to show up and have personality and bring something to the table the audience is invested to watch you. If you're a stoic man with no name, woman with no name, or you don't say much, but you prove everything in the game, great. People will latch on to that, like The Undertaker. But you have to bring an element of pizzazz, because this is entertainment. And the players that recognize that and embrace that, they're the ones that are still here. They're the ones that are still showing up for the PlayStation Open Series. They're the ones still showing up for Final Combat. They're grizzled. Yeah, they're tired, but they're making a little bit of money here and there, and they want to make it to that finals. But the measured expectations of what it takes to make it in the entertainment industry in general, but let alone as a competitive player, is very difficult. And the most important thing is to have a great support structure around you, be it a team, be it a friend, a training partner, and have measured goals. What do you want to accomplish this year? And focus on that. Focus on the quarter and the year. And if you measure those goals and you have realistic goals and you attain them, you'll have so much more happiness rather than, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just kind of swimming in the middle of the ocean. I still got some sponsors. I'm going to stream every day, but I'm just floating. I'm just floating. And when you start floating for too long, you don't know where you are and you're unhappy. And it feels like all the efforts that you've put in have kind of made you lose all this energy and not get the satisfaction that you want.
There's no progress. Like
you have to be progressing. You have to be progressing. There's no progress. That's how I still stream, dude. There is a time where I'm like, I don't want to stream anymore. I'm done with streaming. And I bartended for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I got to learn a different craft, met a lot of different people. But then the pandemic happened and I thought, well, I've been growing my business. I've been growing my studio. Now's the time for me to be more dedicated to my streaming. But the expectation for me is I have no idea what's going to come of this streaming thing. I know I have to have a day job or some sort of income coming in. And if there's one day where I do have enough money coming in as a streamer, that can disappear at any day. So
Right.
I'm not going to radically change my life just based off the money I'm making today, because it's not going to be the same money tomorrow. Right, Kitty? I know you're hungry. We're going to get you fed soon. You got food. I fed you. You want to go outside? You're not going outside. Not today. My cat's awesome, but she's the only person I have to talk to.
Yeah. And what's also interesting about that too is by doing these things or accomplishing things is you also find out what you don't want. And I think that's something that a lot of people you don't document the things that you found that you don't want. You're so caught up in marking down the successes, right? I hit my viewership goal, or I won this amount of money, or I streamed this amount of hours. But what you're not realizing is like, man, I fucking missed 6 meals this week because of my streaming regimen. Or, man, I really hate the way that I feel after an 8-hour streaming session. Maybe I should do 4. Just like really criticizing or being critical of the things that are dragging you down and not laser focusing on the successes. Because at the end of the day, when I build something, I don't need people to tell me, hey, it was good. I need people to tell me where I fucked up, or I need people to tell me where to improve, because that's how you grow. And 9 times out of 10, when people tells me that something was good, it's like, yeah, I fucking know it was good because I planned about it. Like, I know what I'm doing to a certain extent, right? I need you to point the blind spots for me, because that's where I respect and I value that opinion, right? I don't need anybody to pat me on the shoulder. And maybe that's a personal preference, right? Going back to treating yourself nicely and not holding yourself hostage, you should reward yourself, right? So it shouldn't all be 100% nose to the grindstone, but you need to be critical of yourself as well, and understand that when you're critical of others, you need to do it in a way that's constructive. And I don't think that doesn't exist right now. People are critical of others, but provide no solutions, or they're critical of others and they don't have a clear vision of the entire puzzle. And I despise that about social media in general. If we go back to the fighting game community, people talk about, why didn't this event do this? Or he should have done that. It's like, nah, man, we're already 4 layers deep in the planning process and the cause and effects. And we're looking at 3rd and 4th order effects of the decisions that we're making. We're not just like digging into a hat and making decisions, bro. We have a plan. And that was one of the things that you and I talked about a long time ago, is like, I wish we could just like get these guys in a room and just tell them to shut up and listen, like lay out all the cards on the table. This is why we're doing things these certain ways. It's not because we don't care. It's not because we don't know. We're actually like 4 levels ahead of you. Like, this is the reality of the situation or the area that we're playing in, right? So I think 9 times out of 10, people just need to shut up because they don't have enough info to actually provide any real constructual, they don't have anything to bring to the table, I guess.
Yeah, they're unhappy and they want you to know, but okay, I know you're unhappy, but let's work on the solution together.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
And I fall into the school of thought of like, stop making stupid people famous, man. Like, what you talk about, like those news channels that made all their claim to fame was stirring up hate, right? Is like the way that you make that stuff go away is you stop interacting with it. You like stop putting a spotlight on dumb people and dumb ideas, and eventually they go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it'll start to happen naturally in the evolution. But the role of having a commissioner, or at least a face and the voice of the competition level, I took that role on very seriously, because there needed to be somebody for somebody to yell at if things went wrong.
Yeah,
or at
you need
least
accountability
you
too.
need accountability. And Intersport is the one that handles the pro competition, but there's no public figure. It should be Willie P, and they should be able to give him that mantle to be that commissioner role. So there's a face and a voice that goes with the pro competition, like a Vince McMahon, like a whoever you want to name in the sports world. Because if there is an issue and Willie P or whoever gets to say, this is the rule, this is why we do the rule, if you have any issues, you come to me. That way they're not coming to the commentators, they're not coming to WB, they're not coming to NetherRealm, they're not tweeting Ed Boon.
Yeah.
They're coming to Willie about this.
Right.
And that's why there needs to be that type of accountability person. I trust Willie to be able to do it, which is why I name him. All right. I trust the Intersport guys for what they're doing with the pro competition, because I think they've been doing a good job. But that helps get rid of I would hope get rid of some of the angst of keyboard cowboys and cowgirls just shooting from the hip things are pissed off about into the ether rather than directed to somebody. Because when you have to talk to somebody or direct it to somebody, at least I would hope, in a more formal fashion, you have to not just have your emotions on your sleeve. You have to approach it from a courteous standpoint in order to be taken seriously. But I could be completely wrong, because I actually use my real name on social media.
Actually, you have accountability.
I have accountability. I don't hide behind anonymity, and people that do can say whatever they want on social media. And so my thought pattern probably is not going to work in that situation. But I like having somebody represent a system or a competition just to have a face and voice with the accountability. But there is an NRS Esports Twitter account, so you can, there's at least
it's the same problem, right? It's faceless. Yeah. It's so easy to yell into that faceless void, right? And just brain vomit whatever you want. But the moment that there is a person on the other side, at least you have just a 1% more compassion than you did before, right?
Yeah.
And Walter he's a smart guy. He's a tough guy. He sticks up for himself. He has a great moral compass, right? Like he's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're not gonna fuck with that guy. It's one of those things that he's very sure of himself, but he's also not devoid of self-awareness. Like he's willing to listen to people and actually hear them out and take their opinion, right? And like when I first met Walter, he was an admin on MKX, right? It was one of these things that he just did it because he loved it, right? And he was also running events and whatnot. So he never puts any position below him, like in air quotes, right? Yeah. He knows every single part of the pipeline, which is why I think he would fit into that role really well. With that comes it comes with a huge responsibility, right? And some people just don't want it, right? And I completely understand that.
True. Yeah.
I don't want the Twitterverse yelling at me for stuff on the show, because I don't think they know what they're talking about half the time, right? It's like, but I'm more than happy to shield people from that if I need to, right? Because I'm willing to disconnect from my social. It doesn't define my happiness. I don't care what people have to say,
You know what? I remember a conversation you and I had last time that we spoke, but not allowing talent to check social media during a show. I'm following that rule as talent. Yep. But for any shows that I do produce, I'm going to enforce that as well. When you're on my set, your phones are off. You're not checking Twitter. You're not interacting. You're focused on the show. If there is somebody there that you want to handle your Twitter and to tweet stuff out and be engaged, okay, we'll pass it off to that person during the show, and we'll talk about that ahead of time. But I want you focused. And I'm just going through that scenario in my mind over and over again, how many times I was validating myself based off of responses and forums and Twitter rather than the people that was paying my paychecks, or being present in the moment to what's happening, or trying to produce the next great segment instead of looking at all the responses for what I just made and be like, oh yeah, that was great, wasn't it? Of course it was great. I know it was great because we planned it to be great. What's next?
Exactly.
What are we doing?
Yeah. And one thing that's a little bit harder to examine is how you felt, right? Because yeah, some of that stuff made you feel great, but how much of it made you feel like shit, and for what reason, and how did that ripple into the show, and not just ripple into your performance, but maybe it tripped up the chemistry between you and the people behind the camera as well. Because it's one thing we don't really talk about a lot is these people behind the camera, they're invisible. Their job is to be invisible, but there's it's a dance between you and the people in front of the camera, right? And having worked with you for so long, we almost had psychic connections sometimes, or you would bring things up in conversation where like, oh, he needs this, let's give him this, right? And just kind of like support each other in that way. So like all these things are just slightly disrupted, and just like one tooth of the cog gets slightly bent and it fucks everything up. And yeah, it's just for what? For what? There's really no reason for it.
For an endorphin kick. You know what? I should tell them, save your endorphins until after we land this show.
Yeah. And that's going to be there, right? Because you all like worked your ass off to build something amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that's real, right? Like that camaraderie with the people that you work with, not Johnny Donuts on Twitter saying that you had a bad performance because he's pissed at his life and doesn't work out and just got Cheeto dust on his fucking face. Like,
that's right.
Get out of here, dude.
This is the type of wisdom that the world needs, of recognizing the pitfalls of social media and where it's appropriate and when it isn't, because you and I have lived it. We've lived it. We have now seen the consequences of those decisions and what is going to be the better decision on set. And there's no magic wand for that, buddy. There's no school you can go to that. It's because we have been in the trenches together and have seen it.
Trial by fire, man.
That's right.
Have you seen The Social Dilemma, by the way, on Netflix?
No, I haven't. Not yet. I just watched My Octopus Teacher, though. Have you seen that?
I watched the trailer, but I haven't watched it. So we both got some homework after the show.
Cool.
Okay. Watch The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, I need to because I've heard about it a number of times. I know Joe Rogan's mentioned it. I think you told me about it, so I will.
Yeah, there's a great line in there where if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And that like sums up social media in general, right? Like these companies are getting rich selling you as a stat line. And imagine how different a place Twitter would be if you were paying for it, right? Might actually be okay. But some other dimension, another alternate reality. Where's Doctor Strange when we need him?
He's coming. He's coming, man. We all wanted him during WandaVision, but I won't mention any spoilers. Y'all can see my review about WandaVision on my channel on YouTube. Check it out there. But we got Falcon and Winter Soldier next, and I'm down for some martial arts, dude. I'm down for some more punches being thrown. For sure.
I saw the funniest line about that, and I don't know if it's true because I haven't watched it, but they said that it's an extension of Black Mirror, Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. But for somebody that hasn't watched a lot of Black Mirror, then I don't know. I can't say how accurate that is.
Okay.
So report back. I got some stuff to watch, man. I've been trying to disconnect from here a bit more, right? And trying to, just be re-inspired again. I think that's also been really helpful for me, and just to go back and kind of build things, but also look at stuff that inspired me and give me ideas, and then, just trying to keep learning, right? I think everybody gets to a certain point in their life, and maybe it's the time of the year where you just feel like you've done all you can do, or you learned everything that you can to learn, and that's not true. There's always something else. There's always something else out there. You just gotta put forth the effort to look.
Yeah, when you feel like you've hit a ceiling, that's where I felt 3 years ago. Do I want to sacrifice a good paying salary job at ESL America, or the good relationship I had when I started my own business there, to come up to Seattle? Well, I mean, the question was, do I want to keep paying high overhead costs and build my business in a small studio apartment? Or do I want to live where my roots are and we have water? I'm going to go live where we have water. And making that move 3 years ago, then the pandemic happened 2 years after that. I was like, I made the right choice. Because if I was stuck in that studio apartment during this stuff, dude, no thanks. I probably would have come home anyways. So I'm glad I made the decision, but it was a risk to take for sure. But I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I wanted to balance my life with, and to make sure I maintained that balance so I could have my baseline level of happiness. But when you brought up the word, um, um, not reinvigorated, but inspired.
Yeah.
I remember when we saw The Last Jedi together.
Oh,
and how all of us, you said it, I'll never forget it, because we all walked out, and this was out of the TCL Chinese Theater, the main theater in the whole world. We saw it, midnight screening. We walked out, we turned the corner, we're grabbing a lift, and you said, guys, I don't think I liked it.
Yeah.
And just crushing feeling of, oh my God, what happened? And that really sowed the seeds for me to be like, I don't have to live in this Hollywood machine anymore. Things have changed because of the internet. If they're going to treat my heroes like this, so, what has gone wrong? And lost my inspiration of the filmmaking Hollywood world of I don't know, I want to keep saying Hollywood world, but you know what I mean? Professional filmmaking, professional television, that the pinnacle of what I was looking at from a kid all the way through my adult life, why I went to school, etc. Season 2 finale of Mandalorian was this flood of emotion I didn't even know I was capable of feeling, of so much joy to see my hero in that scenario. And then in yoga and going through this yoga training, my yoga teacher was talking about 9-year cycles. And she did a couple of numerology. And these are fun exercises, but just to understand where people are in their lives. And my number was 1. So I'm starting the first year in my 9-year cycle. And when I took a step back and I thought, okay, well, hopefully wrapping up this pandemic, I was bartending for 2 years, but still working with Warner Brothers to kind of take a break from the production life, but still keep one foot in it. Now I've embracing the production life, pretty much 4 hours plus a day, building my own stream, building my own studio. I have a major announcement coming down the pipeline here soon. And ever since come on, Kitty, don't press any keyboard buttons. Thank you. Ever since
Hi, Selena.
Hi, Selena. Yeah, she misses you. Ever since I made the decision to set the schedule, just set the schedule, worry about the specifics. What am I doing Monday, 8:00 in the morning, Tuesday, like putting it in my Google Calendar, did I start to recognize I was so much happier because it felt like I was actually taking control of my destiny instead of letting others kind of point me where I wanted to go. I know where I want to go. I've done the things I've wanted to do in my life, and it's time to move forward. And having the non-negotiables of always having my fitness and my YouTube channel continue to grow with those two things allows me to be freelance and to grow from there. And brother, I'm so much happier. Coming out of this, hopefully, pandemic, because damn, it's been crazy. And it was crazy to have everything wiped out. Not just all of my video game conferences, in-person events as a host, but bartending too. So all the income was gone. But then to just reconnoiter, reorganize, and go, what do I want to do? I'm going to focus the next 10 years, build my YouTube, because so many people have told me you got to do it. I see other handsome motherfuckers doing it as well. And I think I got half as much charm as them. I'm going to give this a shot. But I'm not sacrificing my relationship or my goals of acting. I'm further enhancing it, because today, having 1 million subscribers on YouTube, hell, having 10,000 subscribers on YouTube opens up a lot more doors than just auditioning off the street. And that's the game that I have to play now. But damn, I'm so happy that I'm able to make the decision today to do it this way, rather than being confused and playing both sides and trying to figure out, do I go the old Hollywood way and do these auditions, or stream from home, or I'm working full time streaming, so I really don't feel like streaming at home because it feels like I'm still working. How do I balance this out? And it took years and years and years, and here we are. We are.
But I will say, like, as long as I've known you, it's never been your personality to be super wishy-washy, right? And maybe that's your military experience. But even if you don't have all the information, you're really good at making a decision or being decisive with the information that you have at hand. And so I mean, I was super happy to hear how you were saying, like, yep, I'm going back to Seattle, but you said it with conviction, right? It wasn't like I didn't believe, it wasn't like I didn't believe you. It's like, oh, this is what his life is now. This is what he wants to do, right? And I think a lot of people would speak negatively of that because their definition of success is so much different than yours. And that's the beauty of individuals, is your definition of success doesn't have to be the same as mine. I could want to be a millionaire and live in a penthouse in New York or something like that, as some arbitrary random dream, right? But somebody else wants to get married and have 2 kids and have a white picket fence. Or, to your point, they want to go out and have new experiences and build new relationships and test yourself, and also just continue to chase the thing that you love, right? So everybody has time. And it's really easy to be existential, especially in this time of just like, what's the point? Why am I even doing this? Nothing matters, right? And the inverse of that, if nothing matters, then there's no reason to not try anything, right? And that's where you can really kind of find some positivity there, and just really just try and take some chances, because if nothing else matters, then why the fuck not take a chance? It's really hard to spin creativity these days. I feel like a lot of people are kind of stuck in this vacuum. And you talked about taking control of your life, man. Like, there's been a couple examples that are just like so vivid to me, but they're also so trivial. And one of them was getting on a bike, getting on a scooter, right? Like, as an American, you drive everywhere. In Europe, I haven't driven a car in 2 years. But then getting on a bike and being in control of your own destiny, where there's some danger and you need that situational awareness to dodge that truck that you almost got hit by, right? You start to be more aware. You're in control of your own destiny, even if it's for that moment, right? And I feel like a lot of people are kind of stuck in this mindset of like, I have no control of anything. And it's finding the things that you do have control of that you really need to fucking latch onto and just like take ownership of that. It's like, no, this is my thing. This is my contribution. This is my grip on reality. I'm going to go all in on this thing. And then hopefully you find some inspiration or some paths along the way, right? Like, sometimes if you keep going down the path long enough, sometimes you'll find a fork in the road that you want to try it out. And that goes back to what the voice actor had told you, right? The door had opened, just walk through and see what happens. At the end of the day, you can choose to continue walking down that path, or you can diverge. It's up to you, right? But yeah, just being aware, of yourself, I think is the moral of the story.
Absolutely. You got to be aware, because that's ultimately how you're going to identify what makes you happy and what you don't want to do. And I think you need to figure that out by the time you're 35. And I'm glad I did. Well, Brett, this has been an awesome conversation, man. I think we've hit 2 hours. What is around the corner for you? What's happening next for you?
It's really hard to say. I haven't been stateside in over a year. And that's scary, worrying. I don't know. It's fine. I don't really know. And that's the thing that I need to deal with, and the thing that I need to figure out is I need to find the next thing that's going to light me on fire. I really love working with my colleagues here at Riot. I think they're all fantastic. I don't know. I'm just continuing to kind of try to take my own advice and just take more ownership of the things that I have here, and just really try and dig my roots in deep and just figure out the thing that is really exciting to me. Because I've been in the control room for 10 years, right? Like, what's next? Like, do I go down a business route? Do I maybe try and work on the sponsorship side? Some things that I've kind of seen both sides of the coin on, having worked in the production where I actually have to execute this, having worked at the Red Bull team and figuring out like what makes a really good marketer. Those are all things that are kind of exciting to me. And then just like what my life looks like outside of the video games and outside of my career. I feel this scary existential feeling that you become one-dimensional, and that's something that I'm like battling with internally and just figuring out ways to branch my life out again. But that's a hard one. That's for me to fight, yeah. And then when I figure that thing out, you guys won't know about it because I'm not going to tweet about it. I'm just going to do it. I've been going for a run every single morning. How many times have I tweeted? Fucking goose egg. 0.
Dude, I'm so glad that we're in that same type of mentality, because there's been a number of times where I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I'm like, who fucking cares? I care. Why do I need to post it? What type of validation am I seeking?
It's a victory for you, man.
Yeah.
It's to prove to yourself that you can do it, and to have discipline to say that you did it, and embrace the suck, embrace the terrible fact of it, because everything that you do afterwards, once you jump on Combat League after busting your ass for hours and hours building your farm or doing your workout or studying, you know, it's going to be that much more enjoyable.
Well, we can see your work over at LCS Europe. Do you have any dates on
LEC.
upcoming shows? Oh, sorry, LEC.
Don't.
Yeah.
Oh my! You said that.
No. What have I done? LEC.
LCS League Championship Series is the North American League. The
Gotcha.
European League, formerly EU LCS, is the LEC.
LEC.
Best league in the world. Yeah. You can find us on Twitch, twitch.tv/LEC. We broadcast Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays on what time is that in NA? It's early morning time, so around 9 a.m., which is around 6 p.m. in the afternoon. We do a 30-minute ready check, and then we have 5 games a day, followed by our post show, which is called Post Game Lobby. It is week 8 currently at the time of filming this, so we are 1 week before playoffs, and so we have a super week. So we have games Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So tune in to watch some of the best League of Legends and content in the world.
LEC Best League. All right.
Easy.
All right. Brett Bielling, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Final question for you. Mortal Kombat movie. Do you think it's going to be good or bad?
I don't care.
Care.
I don't care what, I don't care what people think. I am excited to experience it myself. It's the same thing with Schneider Cut, and I don't want to jump on a huge tangent here. I'm excited to see what the vision of the artist is before it got ruined. And so I'm excited to see what the vision of these martial artists and these filmmakers are. And I don't give a shit what people think about it. I'm going to enjoy it anyway, because I love Mortal Kombat.
I love it. That's why we're such good friends, because we're on the same page in so many things. Well, Godzilla versus Kong, Mortal Kombat coming out this month. Oh, and Snyder Cut is next week. Mortal Kombat is next month in April, right before the 420 event that I'm hosting. So make sure to put that on your calendar, the 420 DigiFest. Brett Bielling, always a pleasure.
I'll retweet that one for you, okay?
Yeah, he'll sign in just for that. You are a legend, and your
Likewise,
efforts and your knowledge and your wisdom has created such an impact throughout the entire space that it will continue to have a ripple effect for all time. So thank you for that, and good luck in all of your future endeavors. And to everybody watching, thanks as always for tuning into the J.Gray podcast. You can follow me on all the social media. I need to use it less. Mr. Joshua Gray. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you can. I will see you online.
Bye.